You're watching Behind the Headlines, and I'm Pacchia. My guest today is the founder of a nonprofit dedicated to radically rethinking the way we approach legal education in America. Last week, his organization unveiled an alternative to the U.S. News Law School rankings, which, of course, academia loves to hate. Kyle McEntee is the executive director of Law School Transparency. He joins us via Skype. Welcome, sir. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Lee. It's great to be here.
So let's start off by asking, why did you start this group in the first place? You did this in the middle of law school, no less.
Right. I started it shortly into my 1L year, and our purpose was to make law schools more accountable as a primary avenue for creating a legal education system that's affordable for students.
So you call on your website for a total reimagination of the modern law school. What would that look like to you in a perfect world?
Absolutely. So what we're after here is an affordable legal education, one where someone can enter the school and have a reasonable chance of becoming a lawyer, and then have a reasonable chance of actually thriving once they start their practice. And so when we're talking about reimagination of the law school, we're talking about fixing the broken economic model that law schools currently operate with.
I guess you're picking up here on the disconnect that exists between how many law students graduate from law schools each year and how many job openings there are. There's a real disconnect. That is to say, there are many more students than there are spots for people to practice law.
Exactly.
How do you fix that equation?
First step is to reduce the number of students attending law school. And so schools need to reduce their enrollments by roughly 50% in the aggregate. Now, whether this means a few schools closing down or all schools simply reducing their enrollments in proportion to their market power, I'm not sure, but it'll probably be a combination of market forces and governmental oversight that ends up pushing law schools in the right direction.
So you posted an alternative to the U.S. News Law School rankings. You call them the LST Score Reports. Why are these needed? What was U.S. News not doing that you felt needed to be done?
Well, it's as much of what U.S. News is not doing as what they are doing. And right now, U.S. News causes prospective students to make very bad decisions. And it also causes law schools to make very bad decisions. One large component of the U.S. News rankings is the expenditures for student data, which basically gives schools a license to burn money. And one element of the U.S. News rankings that prospective students care about is the employment outcomes. And right now, the U.S. News rankings don't do a good job of actually telling people what schools are connected to the best job outcomes. In other words, there's a very poor correlation between a school's U.S. News rank and their employment outcomes. And according to research by Breaking Media's research arm, the most important thing to law students or prospective law students is their careers. And so we wanted to create a tool that would allow people to see what schools actually are best for their career aspirations, while taking into account their risk tolerance and financial situation.
How did you go about putting this entire website together?
Well, the first step was to change at the regulatory level with the ABA. It was really important for us to push the employment data that's underlying the score reports and the rest of our website out into the open to not only hold schools accountable, but to help students make better choices. And so from there, we decided that the best way to sort schools is on a regional level, because very, very few schools have a national reach. And more often than not, students are making decisions between schools based on marginal differences in their rank. And if we could get people to focus more on the employment outcomes where they actually want to work, we think we can end up with a set of better decisions all around.
So as you went through this process and came up with your final results, what surprised you most?
I think what surprised me most is just how poorly law schools are doing. Being involved in law school transparency movement has really shined a light on the poor outcomes in the aggregate. But when you actually look at the poor outcomes school by school and student by student, it really makes you feel for the recent graduates and the graduates coming online and the people who will continue to come to school with high expectations and poor economic returns.
What has the reaction been like? I'm sure you've heard from a lot of students, but what do schools have to say about this?
Schools are very optimistic about what we're doing. They do not like the U.S. News rankings. They don't like the influence it has on their decision making, and would love anything that can cut into that influence. And so they view this as one possible step towards focusing students on things that matter.
So what's next? You're out with this report. I see it's getting picked up in the media. People are talking about it. What's the next big thing on LST's radar?
Federal loan reform. This is a very important. Loan reform is a very important element of the law school crisis. And if schools continue to have a blank check, they're going to continue raising their prices, and students will continue following their dreams and ending up in lots of debt. And so what we want to see is, with the Higher Education Act reauthorization in 2013, we'd like to see something along the lines of limiting the amount of financial assistance students are able to get for law school in an effort to drive down the prices.
I see. Kyle, you've had a pretty interesting journey over the past couple of years, both going through law school. That's an adventure for anyone. And starting this really interesting organization. I got to ask, at the end of the day, if you could do it all over again, would you go to law school?
Yes, I would. I think I've gained a lot from going to Vanderbilt. And then I've also gained a lot from my experience with the law school transparency. And while I'm in a lot of debt right now, I think that in my individual scenario, it will end up paying off. But I realize that for many of my friends, that's not the case. And that's what's very disheartening and keeps me moving forward.
All right. Kyle McEntee from Law School Transparency. I want to thank you so much for your time today, sir. This was really interesting.
It was great talking with you.
If you'd like to learn more about the issues we just discussed, be sure to check out our offerings on BloombergLaw.com and also on the Bloomberg Terminal. You can see more of our videos on YouTube, and you can follow our updates on Twitter. I'm Pacchia. Thanks for watching.